Brothers and sisters of Burkina Faso, when I speak to you today, I do not speak as a politician. I speak as a son of this land, as a man who has walked the dusty paths of our villages, who has felt the mud clutching at his feet during the rainy season, who has seen trucks sink into the earth because the road gave way. I speak as one of you, tired of seeing our people stranded, our farmers cut off from markets, our children walking hours in the rain just to reach their school.
The weapon that could change an entire continent isn't a missile or an atomic bomb. It's something you throw away every day. Right now, in a forgotten nation in West Africa, a world-shaking secret is unfolding. A plan so audacious it has the global financial elite on the edge of their seats. They call it the Crazy Project, but for millions of citizens in Burkina Faso, it's the only ray of hope. A young president, Ibrahim Traoré, has dared to do the unthinkable, to turn trash into a pathway to freedom. This isn't a story about construction. This is the story of a war without guns, an unbalanced showdown between a resilient people and the invisible shackles that have bound them for centuries. If you have ever felt trapped, cornered by invisible forces, leave a like for this story as a declaration that we will never give up. This war began with silent cries in the night. Imagine a land where every rainfall is a death sentence. The red dirt roads, the nation's lifeblood, turned into deadly rivers of mud in a matter of hours. An ambulance carrying a dying child, swallowed by the road, just miles from the hospital. School buses filled with the laughter of children, stranded for hours, even days, in the scorching 110-degree Fahrenheit heat. That was the old Burkina Faso, a prisoner of its own geography and poverty. Ibrahim Traoré, a young soldier who carried the pain of his people, witnessed it all. He knew he couldn't wait for juicy loans that came with crippling strings attached. He had to find a way out, a path built with their own self-respect and with what they had on hand, even if it was trash. And then, the order was given. Not from a lavish boardroom in Paris or Washington, but from the heart of a dying land. Ibrahim Traoré ignited a quiet revolution, and the first bullet in this war wasn't made of metal, but of rubber. Picture an invisible, toxic enemy, silently strangling the nation. That enemy is millions of old tires. They are not just waste. In Burkina Faso, they are ticking time bombs. When burned, they spew black smoke thick with dioxin, one of the most terrifying chemical poisons known to man, causing cancer and birth defects. When discarded, they become stagnant pools, the perfect breeding grounds for Anopheles mosquitoes, carrying the malaria that claims the lives of over 600,000 Africans every year, most of them children. Western governments spend billions on anti-malaria campaigns, yet they ignore this massive plague pit. Traoré looked at that pile of waste and didn't see an end. He saw a beginning. The plan that was drawn up was unlike any engineering textbook in the world. It was more like a military campaign. Thousands, then tens of thousands of young people across the country were mobilized. They were not construction workers paid by the hour. They were soldiers in a war to reclaim their future. They scoured every landfill, every street corner, every dry riverbed to collect their weapons. Every tire they found was a brick in the foundation of their economic independence. The construction process was a symphony of meticulous and brilliant creativity. The tires weren't just thrown down haphazardly. They were arranged by workers, with their bare hands, into a perfectly interlocking matrix that stretched for miles, creating a flexible armor for the earth. This armor can breathe. It expands in the 120-degree Fahrenheit summer heat and contracts in the cold desert nights without cracking. And here is the genius twist, the secret that stunned the world's top engineers. The concrete mortar spread on top. This wasn't ordinary concrete. It was a secret formula, developed by Burkina Faso's local engineers, a special cement polymer blend with an extraordinary ability to bond to the rubber surface. It's like a second skin, tough enough to handle the weight of trucks weighing tens of tons, yet flexible enough to absorb shocks from the ground. The result is a road that is not only 40% cheaper than the traditional asphalt paving method, it is also more durable, more resilient, and many times more resistant to earthquakes and floods. But the true value of this road isn't on its surface. It's in what it has broken. For decades, Burkina Faso, like many African nations, was locked in a deadly trap. To build roads, they had to import bitumen, or asphalt, at exorbitant prices from multinational corporations. To get the money for imports, they had to take on debt from international financial institutions. And those loans always came with strict political and economic conditions. It was a cycle of dependency, a modern-day shackle. Traore's tire road took a sledgehammer to that shackle. Every mile of road completed was a slap in the face to the neo-colonial economic model. It proved that a nation does not have to sell its sovereignty to achieve development. The shockwave spread through the corridors of power. If Burkina Faso could do this with tires, what could other nations do with plastic bottles, with electronic waste? This model, if replicated, has the potential to collapse a trillion-dollar industry and rewrite the rules of the global game. That's why they're worried. This isn't a construction project, it's a spectacular escape. For the people, the change was almost a miracle. A village that once took 5 hours to reach on a muddy track is now only an hour away from the city. A farmer can now bring his produce to market before it spoils. A child with a high fever can now get to the hospital in time. Right now, wherever you are, pause for a second and ask yourself, between a familiar path that leads to a dead end and a new path, full of thorns but promising freedom, what would you choose? Write your choice in the comments. Number 1 for the old road. Number 2 for the road of Ibrahim Traoré. Let's see together how many brave hearts are beating to the same drum. A road can connect lands, but it cannot feed a nation. Ibrahim Traoré's revolution had only just begun. After conquering the ground, he looked up to his next enemy, an enemy even more brutal and ancient than poverty, the sky. Welcome to the Sahel, the southern edge of the Sahara Desert, a place where the sky is a searing brass dome, and the earth is cracked like the skin of a dying old animal. Here, water is not a resource, it is a miracle. For generations, the farmers of Burkina Faso lived a life of gambling with God. They planted seeds, planting the hopes and futures of their families in the dry earth, and then looked to the heavens to pray. But the prayers often vanished into thin air. The seeds died, the land grew barren, and a silent hunger, as persistent as a ghost, settled over the villages. It wasn't the loud hunger you see on international news. It was the hunger of fathers and mothers quietly eating less so their children could have one more spoonful of porridge. The desperation of a people betrayed by their own nature. Western powers, with their hypocritical rhetoric, talked about climate change and sent expired food aid packages, but they never offered a real solution. Because a hungry people is an easily controlled people. A nation dependent on food aid will never dare to raise its own voice. Food dependency is one of the strongest invisible chains. And Ibrahim Traoré decided to cut that chain. He launched a project even more audacious than the tire road, building a massive nationwide network of artificial canals. This wasn't a plan to make it rain. It was a plan to capture the rain. In the Sahel, the rainy season is short and violent. Water pours down like a deluge for a few weeks and then disappears, running off the hard, dry ground and evaporating under the scorching sun, leaving behind a drought even more brutal than before. Traoré's plan was to build hundreds of miles of canals and reservoirs to capture every precious drop of that water, channeling it into massive storage lakes and turning it into a national savings account. The water would be held, protected, and distributed to the fields throughout the long dry season. Imagine the scale of this battle. This was an effort to change the very geography of an entire country. It was like implanting an artificial Venus system into a dying body. These canals don't just carry water, they carry life. They are a declaration of war on destiny, an affirmation that humans are not slaves to the weather. And once again, behind this irrigation project was a sharp geopolitical move. By securing a water source, Traoré was giving his farmers the ability to grow essential food crops: wheat, corn, rice. This directly challenges the neo-colonial agricultural model that the great powers have imposed on Africa for decades, forcing nations to grow cash crops like cotton and coffee for cheap export, only to then use that meager income to import food at high prices. Traore was saying, "We will feed ourselves. We will no longer be hostages at the global food negotiation table." This is a declaration of food sovereignty. A nation that can fill its own granaries is a free nation. It cannot be threatened. It cannot be bought with promises of aid. This canal not only waters the crops, it nourishes national pride. It transforms farmers from beggars of God into masters of their own land. The sound of water flowing in the first canal was not just the sound of life. It was the sound of shackles breaking. They say that man cannot command the sky, but Ibrahim Traoré is proving that we can hold on to its blessings. This makes me think about the most basic things we often take for granted. A clean glass of water, a full meal. If you agree that the right to eat, the right to drink, the right to live a life without begging for the pity of others is a fundamental human right, comment the number 9 down below, the number of abundance and eternity. Let the world see that we stand with those who are fighting for their most basic rights. A people with roads to travel, water to drink, and food to eat has a strong enough foundation to survive. But Ibrahim Traoré is not fighting merely for survival. He is fighting for his people to rise. The revolution enters its third phase, the final battle to break the chains of the past and step into the 21st century. This time, the enemy is darkness. Darkness, in the literal sense. Imagine a life where the setting of the sun is also the fading of hope. Night falls, and millions of homes sink into silence. Children must strain their eyes to study by flickering candlelight or a toxic kerosene lamp, its smoke silently destroying their young lungs and eyes. In hospitals, a sudden power outage can be a death sentence for a patient in the emergency room. Small businesses cannot grow because machinery cannot run. Energy is not a luxury. It is the dividing line between a stagnant life and a future of growth. For years, the energy trap was just like the food and infrastructure trap. To get electricity, they had to import diesel or gas at sky-high prices, making the cost of electricity an unbearable burden. Or, they had to accept massive loans to build thermal power plants, a technology of the last century, further binding them to debt and dependency on foreign fuel supplies. Their energy prices were decided in London, New York, or Moscow. The supply could be cut at any moment, turning an entire nation into a hostage. Traoré looked at this trap and decided not to step into it. Instead, he would fly over it. He announced the most ambitious, most insane, and most brilliant plan yet. To build a sun city, not just a few panels on a roof, but building an entirely new city from scratch, a model metropolis designed to be a living, self-sufficient energy entity, a technological oasis in the heart of the desert. Once again, he turned a curse into a blessing. The sun, which had once scorched the land and brought drought, would now become an endless source of energy, the nation's gold mine. Burkina Faso sits directly on Earth's sunbelt, where the intensity of solar radiation is the highest on the planet. They were not energy poor. They were sitting on an untapped treasure. Imagine this city. It doesn't belong to the present. It belongs to the future. Every roof, every facade of the high-rise buildings is covered with high-efficiency photovoltaic panels. There will be no ugly utility poles tangled with wires. The entire power grid will run underground. Electric public buses will glide silently, with no smoke, no dust. There will be free public Wi-Fi zones, powered entirely by the sun, connecting young people to the treasure trove of human knowledge. This is a city with no noise from generators, no exorbitant electricity bills, no toxic fumes. It is a declaration made of steel, glass, and silicon that a green and sustainable future is not the privilege of wealthy nations. This project is the final piece in Traoré's puzzle of freedom. It brings energy independence. A nation that produces its own energy can never be blackmailed. It creates an entirely new economic engine. The plan includes building local assembly and manufacturing plants for solar panels, creating thousands of high-tech jobs. The young people who once collected tires will now be trained to become engineers and solar energy technicians. It is a quantum leap in the quality of human resources. Most importantly, This sun city is positioned to become a beacon. While developed countries are still struggling with debates over carbon taxes and finding it hard to abandon fossil fuels, a poor, landlocked African nation is leading the way. They are not just building a city, they are building a model for the entire world. They have built roads from trash, they have found water in the desert, and now they are building a city from sunlight. This is not just a project, it is a vow to the future. Share in the comments one thing that you believe our children's generation deserves to inherit: a clean environment, a better education, or a world without war. Write down your dream for the future, to spread the hope that a better world is not just a dream, but something we can build together. But what happens when the beautiful dream of one nation becomes a nightmare for a world order? What happens when your beacon is seen as a dangerous threat? As Burkina Faso began to stand on its own 2 feet, the world started to pay attention. And not everyone was applauding. A sophisticated media campaign began to be orchestrated on the global stage. News reports from major Western news agencies began to change their tune. At first, it was skepticism. They called them vanity projects, unsustainable. Then came the slander. They subtly implied that a poor nation couldn't do these things on its own, that there must be some power behind it, maybe China, maybe Russia, aiming to destabilize the region. They tried to turn a story of self-reliance into a geopolitical chess game of superpowers, stripping the people of Burkina Faso of their credit and their pride. They could not accept the fact that an African nation could decide its own destiny. Next came the visits. Delegations from international financial institutions, development experts from Europe, diplomats from Washington poured into the capital, Ouagadougou. They didn't come to learn. They came to advise, to warn. In their expensive suits, sitting in cool, air-conditioned meeting rooms, they presented complex charts, risk analyses, and talked about international standards. Their language was polite, but the message was as clear as a threat. You are going off track. This is not how things work. Return to the proven model, the model of debt and dependency, or there will be economic consequences. This was the invisible hand, now fully revealed, trying to drag the ship of Burkina Faso back into the familiar, stagnant waters. Economic pressure began to mount silently. Trade contracts were suddenly delayed. Shipments of non-essential equipment faced difficulties at customs. International credit rating agencies began to downgrade the nation's creditworthiness. The empire was striking back, not with guns and bullets, but with bureaucracy and invisible financial weapons. But they miscalculated one thing. They could apply pressure from the outside, but they could not extinguish the fire that had been lit from within. Their resistance only made the national spirit of Burkina Faso rise stronger than ever. While the West sent warnings, neighboring countries like Mali, Niger, and Chad sent delegations of engineers to learn. They saw in the tire roads, in the artificial canals, in the sun city not madness, but an escape, a ray of hope for their own countries. Burkina Faso, from being a poor student in the global classroom, had now become a teacher. Some environmental organizations in Europe even named this model the Eco-Road Model, a late but precious acknowledgement. More importantly, these projects have redefined the meaning of the word development. Development is no longer about dry GDP figures or soulless skyscrapers. Development is dignity. It's when a young man no longer has to bow his head to receive handouts, but can hold his head high with a salary earned from building his own homeland. It's when a farmer no longer has to beg the heavens, but can control his own water source. It's when a child has light to study by and has the right to dream of an unlimited future. It is the change in the eyes of millions of people, from despair to pride. Now, Burkina Faso stands at a crossroads. On one side is the immense pressure from the old world order trying to crush them. On the other is the indomitable will of a people who have tasted freedom and will never turn back. History is always written by the victors, but sometimes the bravest act is not to win, but to dare to fight knowing you might lose. Have you ever had to stand up alone for something you believed was right, while everyone around you said you were wrong, that you were crazy? Share that experience, even with a single word "yes" in the comments, so that the people of Burkina Faso and brave people everywhere know that they are not alone in their fight. Their fight is not alone. Because Ibrahim Traoré knows that his greatest ally is not some distant nation, but a force growing right within his own country, the young generation of Burkina Faso. The real revolution, the one that will decide the nation's future for the next 100 years, is not being built with tires or concrete. It is being built in the minds and hearts of the children. For decades, one of the most effective weapons of neocolonialism has been mental shackles. An educational and social system taught generations of Africans that they were weak, that they needed help, that the best things came from the West. They were taught about the history of France, about European kings, but were ignorant of their own national heroes. They were taught to wait, to hope for some white expert to come and save them. That is mental slavery, more dangerous than iron chains. Traoré is breaking those chains. He understands that building a road is meaningless if the people's minds still walk the well-worn path of self-doubt. Parallel to the massive construction projects, a quiet but fierce educational reform is taking place. In the classrooms, children are not just learning to read and write. They are learning about solar engineering. They practice sustainable farming models right in their schoolyards. The history of Thomas Sankara, the national hero, the spiritual father of the current revolution, is being taught as a core subject. And this is the key to understanding Ibrahim Traoré's vision. He is not a random phenomenon. He is the revival, the embodiment of the dream that Thomas Sankara started in the 1982nd before he was brutally assassinated, an assassination that many believe was orchestrated by Western powers. Sankara once said, "He who feeds you controls you." He once called on the people to consume what we produce, and produce what we consume. He changed the country's name from Upper Volta, a colonial name, to Burkina Faso, which means land of the upright people. Now, almost 40 years later, that spirit has returned. Traoré is finishing what Sankara started. The tire road, the artificial canal, the Sun City, they are all modern manifestations of that philosophy of self-reliance. That is why this revolution has such a formidable spiritual power. It is not a new idea. It is an old flame being rekindled, an unfinished promise now being fulfilled. This revolution is also spreading beyond its borders. A heartfelt appeal was sent to the Burkinabe diaspora, the engineers, doctors, and scientists who had left the country to seek opportunities in Paris, New York, and Montreal. That appeal did not promise a higher salary. It promised something more precious, a purpose. It said, "Come back. Your homeland needs your brains and your hearts. Come back to build, to contribute, be a part of history." And a reverse brain drain wave has begun. The nation's best and brightest are giving up comfortable lives in the West to return, bringing with them knowledge and patriotism to build a new future together. This is a war for legacy. They say a person dies twice, once when their heart stops beating, and a second time when their name is spoken for the last time. Ibrahim Traoré and the people of Burkina Faso are building a legacy that will be spoken of forever, a legacy of dignity and resilience. This makes me wonder, what is the legacy of each of us? It doesn't have to be great works. It could be the kindness you give, the knowledge you share, or a child you raise well. Write in the comments a single word that describes the legacy you want to leave behind. That is the compass for your life. So, in the end, what is this story really about? About roads, canals, or glittering cities? Number. Those are just the musical notes. To understand the whole story, we must step back and listen to the entire symphony. The Symphony of Freedom. Listen to the first movement, the movement of the land. Its rhythm is created by millions of tires, percussive and powerful, like war drums. It is the rhythm of connection. These roads, built from what people threw away, have linked isolated villages, healing the body of a nation divided by geography and neglect. They allow commerce to flow, ambulances to arrive on time, and loved ones to meet. They are the foundation, the solid percussion of the symphony, affirming the first principle of freedom. A people can only be strong when they are united and connected. Then the second movement rises, the movement of water. Its melody is as lyrical and heartfelt as a violin, flowing over the barren fields. It is the melody of life. These canals are the streams that nourish the soul of a nation, washing away the dust of despair and dependency. They turn dead lands into green oases, turning prayers into bountiful harvests. They are the lyrical heart of the symphony, expressing the second principle of freedom. A people can only be sovereign when they can feed themselves. And then, the symphony explodes with the third movement, the movement of the sky. Its sound is as clear and brilliant as a brass trumpet, soaring up to the blue heavens. It is the melody of enlightenment. Sunlight, converted into energy, has illuminated minds, bringing knowledge to every home. It powers dreams, innovation, allowing a young generation to connect with the world on their own terms. The Sun City is the climax of the symphony, a testament to the third and most important principle of freedom. A people can only fly high when they are freed from the darkness of ignorance and possess the power of knowledge, land, water, and sky. Connection, sustenance, and enlightenment. These three musical movements blend together, creating an epic anthem of self-determination. Ibrahim Traoré is not the composer. He is merely the conductor. This symphony was written by the will of the people of Burkina Faso themselves. Its power comes from a shared desire, from a common determination to build a different future. And this is the message this symphony sends to the world. The true wealth of a nation is not in the gold or diamonds in its soil. It lies in its connected people, in its fertile lands, in its enlightened citizens, and in its independent energy. Burkina Faso is redefining wealth for the 21st century. They are giving billions of people in developing countries around the world a new score, a formula to escape poverty and dependency. They are playing a symphony that could change the world, but they are playing it on a stormy stage. Will the world listen, or will it try to silence it? That is the biggest question. History is filled with stories of crushed revolutions, assassinated heroes, and unfinished symphonies. The last time you witnessed something truly beautiful and brave, what did you do? Did you walk away in silence? Or did you stay? Did you applaud? Did you spread the story? If you believe that stories like this need to be heard, that courage needs to be cheered, take a small action right now. Share this video with one person you believe will also be inspired. Be the amplifier for this symphony. That symphony is magnificent. But we must ask ourselves a cold, hard question. What price must the conductor and his orchestra pay for those melodies? What is the price of a dream, especially when that dream challenges the most powerful people in the world? To understand the real danger that Ibrahim Traoré and the people of Burkina Faso are facing, we must go back in time to the 15th of October, 1987. That was the day a tragedy was forever etched into the minds of every citizen of this country. On that day, Thomas Sankara, the national hero, the spiritual father of the current revolution, was brutally assassinated. Sankara was also a young army captain, also full of passion, also incorruptible. He also initiated policies of self-reliance, also stood up against corruption and foreign interference. He was also loved and adored by his people, and he was also considered a threat by the former colonial powers and their puppets within his own government. He was betrayed and killed by his own best friend, Blaise Compaoré, who then ruled the country with an iron fist for 27 years, erasing all of Sankara's legacy and plunging Burkina Faso back into the mire of corruption and dependency. The ghost of Sankara has never left Burkina Faso. It is a constant reminder, a scar that never heals. And now, history seems to be repeating itself in a terrifying way. Ibrahim Traoré is walking the same path that Sankara walked. He is challenging the same enemies that Sankara challenged. He also has a powerful charisma and immense support from the people. So, in the mind of every Burkinabe, alongside hope, is an unspoken fear. Will tragedy strike again? Will their new hero meet the same tragic fate? The threat is not just assassination plots. It is also a brutal, psychological, and economic war. The pressure from the outside is tightening. The enemy's goal is clear: to make life so difficult for the people that they give up on their revolution. They cause shortages of goods, drive up prices, and create instability. They want the people to have to choose between their pride and an empty stomach. They hope that fatigue and exhaustion will extinguish the flame of national pride. That is the price the ordinary people are paying. They live in a state of both excitement and anxiety. They are proud of what their country is achieving, but they also know it could all come crashing down overnight. And what about the price for the conductor? Look at Ibrahim Traoré. He is not a politician in a fancy suit. He almost always appears in his combat fatigues. This is an intentional message. It says that, for him, the country is still at war, a war for economic survival and the protection of sovereignty. He lives a simple, almost ascetic life, a stark contrast to the corrupt leaders of the past. He carries on his shoulders the weight of 22 million lives and the legacy of a fallen hero. It is an unimaginable burden for a man just in his 32nd. It is the loneliness of power, the sacrifice of a personal life for a greater ideal. But in the face of all this pressure and danger, they do not back down. This is the most extraordinary thing. Their persistence is not naivety. It is a conscious choice. They know the price, and they are willing to pay it. They have chosen dignity over safety. They have chosen the thorny path of freedom over the comfort of servitude. Between Traoré and his people, there is an unwritten pact built on absolute trust. He trusts in their resilience, and they trust in his leadership. That bond is the strongest shield protecting this revolution. Ultimately, the story of Burkina Faso is not just their own. It is a mirror, a test for the conscience of the world. It reflects the biggest question that each of us, and each nation, must face. Do we choose to live a safe life in chains, or dare to pay the price for a free future? The final chapter of this story has not yet been written. It is being written every day, with sweat, with tears, with courage, and possibly with the blood of the people there. Its outcome is not predetermined. It depends on whether their voice is heard, on whether their journey is witnessed. If this story has touched your heart, if you believe that courage should be spread and truth should be protected, then don't let this flame die out in silence. Hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because this isn't just a YouTube channel. This is a place where we light torches together to illuminate the stories hidden in the shadows and to continue the journey of seeking dignity and freedom together. Thank you for listening.